Hello, I'm your host Abdul Raza, and welcome to Game Theory Analysis on Formula One, the show where we will be talking about Formula One and latest news and buzz from the sport. We will be unraveling the secrets of one of the most exciting sports in the world and talking about the latest and the most Formula One news which has been happening around the world right now. I'm your host Abdul Raza, and with me is our expert and Formula One enthusiast, Zaviyar Farhan. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. So let's talk about today's top stories, which will be shown on the screen right now. So, Zaviyar, as we know, Azerbaijan Grand Prix is right at the corner, and a lot of buzz is going around, new rules, and a lot of news has been coming up. So, let's talk about that first.
So yeah, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix is right around the corner, as you just said, and it's going to be a very interesting race because there's been a long break where teams can reset with their mentalities going forward, and possibly give Ferrari getting more time to mess up their strategies as normal. So I think Ferrari. So the race around the corner is going to be very interesting, as like I said, the teams have had a big gap, and and obviously with the new sprint rules that have come in that we're going to talk about later in the show, it looks like it's going to be a very interesting encounter between all the teams.
Okay. So, Azerbaijan Grand Prix and all of that has been going on, and during this the spring break which came this time. So that is the spring had any effect on the preparation or the mentality of the drivers.
Yeah, definitely, because as if anyone is related into the sport of F1, they would know that the more you practice and the more you know you're on track, the better you get. It's more like you need to be on the track. So taking breaks from the sport can be very difficult, and then you suddenly get back and you have to be on top pace, especially on sprint weekends. So I think it's going to be really tight for all the teams. I think it's going to be more even than it was coming towards the end or the beginning of the spring break. So I think there's a four-headed monster obviously at the top right now in Formula One. So those four-headed, I think out of those four teams, anyone possibly could win. So and then you have really good battles down the lower half of the table as well. So this is being set up as an amazing race, and I think they're gonna be a lot of encounters, and this is gonna be one spectacle to watch.
Yeah. Let's talk about Australian Grand Prix, which happened uh, later in the last month. So in Australian Grand Prix, the start was like that. A lot of action going on in the start of the race, and many events that happened. Uh, I bet you saw that race too. And
Yeah.
let's talk about the Australian Grand Prix.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think you summarized it really well there. Seven DNFs. So there was a lot of racing incidents that had happened with a lot of penalties and a lot of drama, which has happened on and off track. Obviously, with Carlos Sainz penalty being involved, invigilated, and then that being withdrawn and then put back again. So from him being in fourth position, going all the way to 12th for a 5 second penalty. So there was a lot of drama that happened in the Australian Grand Prix. It was absolutely spectacular to watch. Action from start to finish for sure, with Charles Leclerc going out in the first lap. Then there were a couple of red flags. So it was a great spectacle and something that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm sure all F1 fans did.
Yeah. For me, actually, that was the first race which I watched completely, and boy, that was some race. So many revolutions and such thrilling race. So there were some early exits during the Formula One event at the Australian Grand Prix, and can we talk about that? Carlos Sainz and many others were just making an early exit from the race, and
Right.
some,
Carlos Sainz
yeah.
actually did not exit. He finished the race, but there were a lot of incidents that happened even during the restart. There were many cars gone off track. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Sergio Perez also had a penalty, and then
Yeah,
there were
it was, yeah,
so there were a lot of DNFs. Obviously, George Russell with his mechanical failure at one point, he was looking like he was going to get a podium, but it wasn't meant to be for the Britishman. So there was definitely a lot of encounters, a lot of nervy battles. Fernando Alonso versus Lewis Hamilton. Former teammates have a lot of history between them. Obviously, with the McLaren being them being McLaren teammates, so there was a great battle in between Aston Martin and Mercedes, and that showed the real fight that Aston Martin have shown this season. As Aston Martin even had their press conference that they had recently, and they said that them being one of the better teams in Formula One now has given them more headaches, which is something that I believe every team would love to have. So I think there's a real two-headed battle going in for second in the Constructors' Championship between Mercedes and Aston Martin, and that's going to be absolutely breathtaking to watch.
yeah. So moving on, uh, we heard a lot of talk about Daniel Ricciardo's return to the Formula One. I bet he has brushed off all those rumors recently, and I bet you have something to say about that too.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of spectacle regarding his return to Formula One because people were worried that next year most drivers are actually contracted. So there wasn't any free seats unless someone was to get fired from their job. So, I mean, the only realistic possible contract expiring is Lewis Hamilton. But then again, I think Lewis Hamilton is going to renew with Mercedes the way he's been performing this season. So Daniel Ricciardo will probably have to hope out that someone possibly from a lower team, maybe Haas, Alfa Romeo, someone like this, either upgrades or they potentially lose their seat, and that could give Daniel Ricciardo an opening that he requires. And I think Daniel Ricciardo still has it in him. I think if given the right car, given the right circumstances, this guy could flourish into a lower level team. And if he can, strive alongside a younger driver, give him his valuable experience. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo is an 8-time winner, so there's a countless level of experience that he possesses. And if he were able to enhance it and give it to a younger driver, it would be great for him.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes have actually came out of a black hole of worst performances from
Some
last
source,
year,
yeah.
and I think so. So, uh, what do you think about their performances as well, Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah, last year they started off pretty weak, but this year they've started off good. By the end of last year, Lewis Hamilton had a lot of podiums, so there was definitely a bright side, a silver lining towards the end of their season, which I think they've reflected onto the early part of the season. And I think it was unlucky that Russell had this DNF. Otherwise, I think Mercedes would have probably gotten, I think, a double podium. I think Russell would have overtaken Alonso. So I think, yeah, it's quite interesting to see how dominant Mercedes have been this season. Obviously, not in the comparison of Red Bull, as they've been the most dominant team in F1, but in comparison to Aston Martin, other teams in the mid-table or towards the top of the table, Ferrari, where people expected that Mercedes would fall behind again. But this season, they've shown that they're still the same Mercedes that was there 2 years ago, and they definitely have the firepower to get that second place in the World Drivers' Championship, Constructors' Championship. Sorry.
Yeah. Lewis Hamilton was not happy with the build of the car and the design actually last year, and Mercedes were a little hopeless in the mid of the last year, and Lewis Hamilton was talking about there were talks about him getting transferred to another team. So, what is wrong with the build? What was wrong with the build of the car last year or in last season?
There were just some mechanical faults that were there. I think Mercedes just didn't quite have the race pace in comparison to the other teams, and I think that was just due to a lack of confidence and a lack of stability around their car. Obviously, they had their side pod issue, which was a big deal for Mercedes, as you know, side pod is a very important element to an F1 car
Yeah.
nowadays. So I think that definitely hurt Mercedes for sure. And there was obviously some off the court spectacles going on as well, because people were still arguing the fact that Lewis Hamilton should have gotten his 8th World Drivers' Championship. And I think most of the blame can be gone towards the fact that Mercedes were still distracted and somewhat shocked of what had happened last season, because obviously everyone who saw that final race in Abu Dhabi between Verstappen and Hamilton, it was just like wow, you were in shock at what was happening. And
Yeah,
I think Mercedes just carried that on. They just couldn't get over that. And I think this season they finally passed it, and I think they're more motivated than ever than getting Hamilton that eighth World Drivers' Championship.
yeah. So, as you know, we can not finish our talk without talking about Max Verstappen
Yeah.
uh, winning the Australian Grand Prix and heading on to Azerbaijan. What do you think, Max Verstappen's? What do you think will be going on in Verstappen's head before the
I don't
next
think
race?
there's any level of stress, for sure. I think he's pretty much in his mind. He can be as humble as he wants, but he knows that he's going to be a three-time World Drivers' Championship in a row. I don't think there's any competition whatsoever. I think the only competition he has is Sergio Perez. And with what we've seen with Red Bull, I think it's quite clear that they know that they're not going to give Perez even a shot at that World Drivers' Championship because they're just going to keep Verstappen, try to make him break Schumacher and Hamilton's tied record. And I think he definitely has the potential. And if he does get that third one, which I mean, it's pretty much confirmed that he will at the rate that Red Bull is going. So if he does get that third one, I don't see him stopping anytime soon. So I think Max Verstappen is going to be an all-time great, he already is. And I think he's just so spectacular in the sense of his attacking skills when it comes to Formula One. The way he dives into the corners, while some people may say it's rash, it is what it is. I mean, you need to have that attacking mindset as a driver. So he possesses that killer mentality that you can't be better than me. So it's quite a spectacle to watch from Max Verstappen, and I must say thoroughly that he is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So, talking about Max Verstappen, Red Bulls have made their feelings clear on Max Verstappen's hope for the third consecutive title race, as a contractual phenomena has arisen with him and Sergio Perez. Christian Horner detailed a mandatory contract clause which could derail the Dutchman's title hopes. So, that was the latest news that happened. So do you have any comments about that?
I mean, yeah, it was. I think when Sergio Perez had joined Red Bull, it was a given fact that he was going to be the number two driver at Red Bull because I think Verstappen had already proven himself as a top three driver in the world. So I think Perez knew what role was he was taking on, but I think Perez himself was quite surprised because at one point last season he was giving quite a shout to Verstappen. Maybe Verstappen, possibly could lose if they give Perez an equal amount of opportunity. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Verstappen definitely has that favoritism biasness towards him. But I mean, to be fair to him, he does deserve it as much as I love Perez. And I think he deserves all the best for him when it comes to his Formula One career. I think he's very skilled, but I don't think he's quite at the level that Verstappen is, and I don't think they would want any bad relationships or any, drama that could cause a lot of damage to the Red Bull team. So I think they're going to keep it nice and simple and keep Verstappen as the number one driver.
Yeah. So we talked about early exits in the Australian Grand Prix, and as you mentioned, Sergio Perez's exit and many others. So, do you think that there were some technical reasons with that, or just the drivers were just hanging out, or something like that?
No, I don't think there was any. I mean, there were some rumors that, I mean, people are going to come up with all sort of rumors, and people were saying that Sergio Perez's car was tampered. But I think people tend to forget how skilled Max Verstappen actually is when it comes to Formula One. So he's that good that, he might make it look like his teammate actually has mechanical failures. But in my personal opinion, I think Verstappen is just that good. He's that guy. So I think there was definitely no mechanical faults or rumors like that when it comes to Perez's car. I think it was just Verstappen absolutely outclassed him, which is something we would expect from a two-time World Drivers' Champion. So it wasn't something out of the ordinary. But I understand why people say so, but I don't see any truth in behind those rumors.
Yeah. So, at the finished as the Australian Grand Prix finished, there were Ferrari's review petitions that were filed in the stewards' offices, and they were rejected. So, what's the total drama about that?
I'm sorry, you were lagging.
Yeah, I was talking about the Ferrari's review petition that was filed by them, Carlos Sainz and their team. Ferrari's review petition.
There's a bit of an audio problem. Oh, review petition. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you were inaudible there for a minute. But yeah, it was basically the fact that Sainz had not served his penalty correctly. And Carlos Sainz basically had gotten a 5-second penalty, which had cost him to drop out of the points. Something that was very suspicious from the FIA because a lot of the fans were quite disturbed to the fact that he was given the penalty as it seemed deemed quite harsh on Carlos Sainz. But the rules are rules. He did, in fact, deserve to get that penalty. But, you could say it's harsh on another day. He might have not got it. It was a very 50-50 decision, something the marshals would have taken deep consideration that what were the consequences to happen if this was to go through. I'm pretty sure they were ready from Ferrari to challenge that decision. So I think Ferrari gave their best in court, but I think it was pretty much in vow that Sainz was going to lose his positions. But there was a silver lining there. Was that Ferrari, Carlos Sainz, at one point after the restart, at one point he was the fastest driver of the grid, no doubt about that. He was faster than Max Verstappen. Arguably, Max Verstappen was saving his tires, but still, he was ahead of everyone else. Carlos Sainz was making 2 to 3 overtakes per lap, so he was absolutely quietly, frankly, sensational. And it was a brilliant effort from him. But it's quite unfortunate that he had to drop down to the points. But definitely, there could be some motivation for him here and there.
Yeah. So next up, we will be talking about the sprint rules that have, as we talked about that in the start of the show. So there are the sprint rules which have been given by the stewardesses in the Formula One. Can you explain to the viewers what the new rules are? And there will be slides next by one by one.
Hello.
Yeah, we were talking about the sprint rules that were,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
they're on the screen right now.
So
So
yeah. So I think basically I'll give a slight overview of what the sprint is. So basically, the sprint had come in as this fresh breath of air in the sort of event. Basically, the main perspective was to give a shorter amount of time for the racers to get ahead, and that would cause more incidents and more drama on track, which would allow F1's viewership to increase as it had decreased over the last 5 or 6 years, but it has a slight decrease again. But I think that was the main perspective. It was more of a business decision than it was something that the drivers would want. It was more for entertainment. And now I think they've just changed it. Even though fan decisions have been against it, I think they've purely done it just for business. And basically, F1 Sprint has become its own race in that sense. So Sprint weekend, it's removing Q2. So there will be qualifying by itself, the race, and the sprint. So the sprint will just be in availability to get extra points, while qualifying that will take place on Friday or Saturday, I believe, that will be given the places Grand Prix qualifying, as I said, on Friday.
yeah.
That will be given races for Sunday. That will be given the position. So we'll be doing normal qualifying, but on Saturday there will be the sprint shootout, which is the F1 sprint, and that is there for extra points. So it's actually quite interesting. I was thinking about it the other day. If imagine if this was here when Verstappen and Hamilton had that race. Considering both were equally as fast, I would have said Hamilton might have edged him there, but that's my personal opinion. But I think if this was here 2 years ago, people would have said this was a brilliant idea. But just due to the fact that Verstappen is so dominant, the fans' viewership towards the decision might be a bit discreet.
So, opinions have loaded in as this new sprint rule was passed by the FIA for the rest of the season on the 2023. And Max Verstappen warned 3 weeks ago that he won't be around too long if Formula One makes more race changes. So, any comment about that?
Um, I think Formula One would lose their biggest talent, and I don't think they would want to do that as their viewership would significantly decrease. But I think, yeah, the FIA have made a lot of rule changes in the previous years, but I do think this is just to the fact that, the hybrid era is coming in, and then there's new technology always coming in, and the pace at which technology is moving forward, F1 have no choice but to keep advancing with these rules. But I don't think they will be as severe as they are now in the next couple of years. I think it will die down a bit. which will be better for the drivers and beneficial, because I feel like there's so many rapid changes that the drivers aren't able to adapt into these certain circumstances that they're put into. So I think they will keep it nice and cool for the next couple of years, but after that, I think it can go all chaos like it is now.
Yeah. So, in the next segment, we will be talking about a driver actually, Fernando Alonso. So, his career and the highlighting. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, Alonso is one of the greatest drivers to ever have graced the sport. He's a two-time World Drivers' Champion, absolutely a sensational driver. El Plan. So, his qualifying pace is absolutely sensational. And he's someone that I mean, he's considered pretty old. He's 41, and he's still one of the best drivers in Formula One, which says a lot about his longevity as an athlete and his availability throughout his career. But I think much to be said is that he is definitely a great, and he's had his rivalries with the likes of Vettel, Hamilton. Those three were the three musketeers that carried F1 during their transition to hybrid era. So, obviously his rivalry with Hamilton was something a spectacle to watch during the late 2000s. But obviously Hamilton did come up on top in the end of it. But Alonso has always been someone that pushes himself to strive to achieve better. And, his statistics speak for themselves. He has over 100 podiums. He has the most race starts in history, the most kilometers driven. So he definitely has the statistics to back him up as a top 10 driver of all time.
Yeah. So, let's move on, and we will be talking about some of the interesting stats for the Formula One, all-time stats that have occurred over the years. So, the first stat will be shared on the screen. Max Verstappen is the
Yes.
youngest driver to win a Formula One race ever at the young age of 18 years, 7 months, and 15 days. He was spectacular, don't you think?
I mean, yeah, that's sums up exactly. Just spectacular. I don't think, in terms of F1 terms, there is any words to describe how talented he is. As much as backlash he might receive on social media, I think if he does, as you said, he threatened F1 that he could leave, and if he does, unfortunately, that would be a great loss, and people will then start to realize how great this man really is. I think if people can understand the value that he possesses and the skills that he has, it's quite sensational, and something that where even if you're a rival fan, you have to sit back and just applaud at the greatness of the driver.
Yeah. So next up, we will have another stat that will be shown on the screen. So Alberto Ascari has the highest win percentage in a Formula One season. He stands 75% in the 1952 season. But
I mean,
yeah,
yeah, he was sensational that season. Obviously, had won a lot of the races, as it says, 75%. 1952 dates back to about 70 years almost. I mean, 71 years. So it's been a while since then. There's been a lot of changes to F1. There weren't as many races there. I think there were about 10 races or 9 races at that point. So winning 75% is a great ratio. And during the times where Fangio and these guys were dominating, obviously, Fangio came a bit later in the late 50s to early 60s, but that was a great time to be an F1 fan. Sadly, we just weren't alive to see it.
yeah. So next up, we will have another segment which we will be asking you for a prediction for the next race at the prognosticators corner. So, who are you rooting for actually in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and what do you think who will be winning it?
I mean, me personally, being a Mercedes fan, I'll be biased towards Mercedes getting the result. But frankly speaking, I think Red Bull will have another dominant race. I think they'll have both drivers up there on the podium, and I think Hamilton will get that third position. I think he's going to split the Red Bulls. I think Hamilton will get second and Verstappen to win and Perez to get third. And I predict Alonso 4 and Russell 5. I think these three teams, Aston Martin, Red Bull, and Mercedes, these three teams are quite frankly on a different level compared to the other ones. I think one team to look out for is someone that can push after a good race in Australia for McLaren. Something possibly that could boost their season, try to savor the season that they're having. It's been an absolutely horror show for them since the start of the season. So they would want to pray for a miracle this race so that they get some sort of benefit, some sort of belief in that garage. So I think McLaren will have a good race, but I think Williams will struggle and Alfa Romeo will struggle as well.
Yeah. So Zaviyar, thank you for your time with us. It is always
Thank
a
you so
pleasure
much.
talking with you,
Of
and we
course,
will
same
have
here
you again after the race in Azerbaijan.
for
We will
sure,
surely have you because it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
for sure.
So
Same here.
this is our show on Formula One for this time. We will see you next time. Thank you very much. And Allah Hafiz.